Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Whole Wellness Mama Summit, where we are unlocking the healthiest, less stressed mom in you using strategies from various wellness experts. I'm your host, Amy Nesbitt, and I am so excited to talk about the benefits of teaching our kids to cook with Katie Kimball. She is the voice of healthy kids cooking, working to restore the health of our young generation, one kitchen at a time. She's a cookbook author, certified stress mastery educator, two-time TEDx speaker, regular TV contributor who has shared her journey to real food and living since 2009 at her blog Kitchen Stewardship, which helps families stay healthy without going crazy. Along with her 4 children, she created the Kids Cook Real Food e-course to help other parents teach their kids to cook, build family connection in the kitchen, and supercharge kids' confidence and creativity. In 2020, the Wall Street Journal recommended the Kids Cook Real Food as the best online cooking class for kids. She's actively masterminding the kids' meal revolution with the goal of every child being able to cook. So personally, I discovered Kids Cook Real Food as a free summer camp during the pandemic, and it was such a blessing. Some of you may have already seen my YouTube video review, actually, of her kids' cooking course. But anyway, my kids knew how to do basic cooking things already, but Katie just has a fun way to teach and challenge the kids that sometimes, or perhaps a lot of the times, moms can't do without butting heads. I know if you've tried to teach your kid a skill, for me, it was piano. You know what I'm talking about. But I'm so grateful we discovered Katie, and I'm not even touching on all the other courses she has to offer, like stress mastery for moms or picky eating. So all that to say, she's fantastic. Welcome, Katie.
Oh man, I'm humbled. It's fun to hear how you found me. But that I think that makes me sound way more fancy than I am. I'm just a mom and a former elementary teacher teaching kids to cook online. And it is stressful to say that certified stress mastery educator, isn't it? Like
I was
that's
like,
hard to
tongue,
say.
tongue, tongue.
I know. And I worry too, like here we are trying to reduce mom stress. And then as soon as people hear like teach your kids to cook, they're like, oops, my fight or flight just went on. But that will be the goal, like by the end of listening, that we will make teaching your kids to cook seem much less stressful and super doable, because if I can do it, anyone can. I'm the hot mess mom who can barely keep it together.
Same,
But
same.
it's really nice to be here. Thank you, Amy.
Yep, of course. It's lovely to have you. And some are meeting you for the very first time. If you could share your quick story and how you came to where you are now, and especially what happened in your own family that kind of compelled you to teach your kids how to cook.
Yeah, I have 4 kids. The oldest just turned 18, just graduated high school. So we're experiencing a major shift into like the step 2 parenting handbook, I guess, which I cannot find at the library yet. We're going to have to write that one ourselves as we figure out how to parent an adult in our home. And
I'll
my
pick it up
youngest
when
is
you get it.
8. So I've had elementary kids. Yeah, right. I have elementary kids, middle school. I have 3 boys and a girl. And when this oldest kid, Paul, was 10, so just past that halfway point of like real parenting to 18, he did a how-to speech in his 4th grade class. And I kind of like mom pressured him into doing food. I'd been teaching kids or teaching adults online for like 7 years at that point. And I'm like, hey, buddy, like, you could do food. I could be really helpful, organizing your talk. So he taught how to make guacamole, which has been something that he was making by himself since like 1st grade. And all the aunties and uncles would be like, oh, Paul made the guacamole for the potluck. And I realized, though, I'm standing there in the classroom watching him because I got to go, because you can't just send a 4th grader to school with a chef's knife. It's not a thing. So I got to come in and bring the knife. And I'm watching him thwack the pit out of the avocado. And the other adults, in the room were like,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
thought, that's cool. Like, I love that feeling of my kids raising the bar, of expectations. But then, like, my heart also sank because I thought, oh my goodness, this is the only recipe he knows how to make. So he did not exactly know how to cook. He knew one recipe. And being at that halfway point of parenting, I was starting to think about launching him into the world, what college would be like, what releasing him off would be like. And I thought, okay, we've been building a culture of healthy food in our house. My kids know how to eat healthy food, but if they don't know how to make it, it's not going to stick. They're going to be in the ramen noodle and frozen pizza aisle anyway in college if they don't know how to use a knife and cut up their vegetables and cook their food. So I really thought I need to teach all my kids to cook in a more systematic manner, because just like winging it wasn't working. So that was the summer that we invited friends over, because again, I don't do things well for myself. I needed something in the calendar. So all my 3 kids who were old enough at the time, the baby was a baby. he was too young. All my 3 kids invited a friend over, which was added chaos, but it was the like boundaries that I needed, because the other families would be counting on me,
Yeah.
And it made it more fun for my kids, right? Like if I said every Monday at 10 a.m. we're doing cooking lessons, it would have been like, oh, I just want to go play, right? So having the friends over was like the dual purpose of more fun for them, boundaries for me. And we, at the end of that summer, sort of created it into a curriculum for other hot mess moms who were not doing well winging it. And that's how Kids Cook Real Food started.
That's amazing. I'm sure the other parents were super excited too because their kids were learning too, right? So it's a win-win-win all around. I know I've loved having my kids learn and help with me in the kitchen as well, hence my YouTube channel, which is Japanese cooking. But other than having the life skill, like you mentioned, of our kids going to college and worrying about them not being able to make anything for themselves, what additional benefits have you discovered from teaching our kids?
Yeah, I mean, that was my motivation, was that very practical. It was both seeing them as 18-year-olds and then also, oh my goodness, I need some help. I'm cooking for these children and not even seeing their faces anymore. So that is my like sort of immediate goal. But as I watched my kids grow in their cooking skills and take on some responsibilities in the kitchen, whether it was as small as, hey, who can cut this cucumber for me, while I'm finishing up the soup, to as big as, my kids making full meals by themselves while I'm not only out of the kitchen, but out of the house. And watching our members too, like as kids around the world are learning how to cook through our classes. I heard enough stories and I saw enough evidence in my own home to realize it's so much bigger than the practical, right? It's bigger than the tools, it's bigger than the food. And at Kids Cook Raw Food, we call it our 3 C's: that connection, confidence, and creativity. And those are these just incredible intangible benefits. It's the connection among family members where you're working together in the kitchen, you're having conversation, right? Like that's when I hear like the good stuff from the kids because we're all working, and you're just, there's that teamwork sense, right? If we're working toward the common goal of dinner or of a snack that we all need to eat. So the connection is amazing, both with the family members and with their food. And that kind of plays into, you touched on the fact that I work with parents of picky eaters as well. And we know that the exposure to foods is really powerful in helping kids build a better relationship with food. So the connection piece is just huge. It kind of spider webs into a lot of areas of life. The confidence is another one that I often talk about, the spider webs. Like kids feel confident using knives, working with fire, right? Planning meals, like nourishing another human being, like that's a big task, right? And so for a kid, whether they're 5 and participating or 10 and taking the lead, for a kid to do something that's such an authentic adult skill, the confidence is massively boosted. And we definitely see that spill over into other areas of life, into school, into extracurriculars. I know I heard from one member who has a bunch of kids and they've lived a real food lifestyle a long time. Cooking is really important to them, that her daughter is often advocating at school for better food, better snacks and treats and
That's awesome.
lunches, and is not afraid to speak up, to peers and to teachers. And even with my own daughter, she's very reserved. She's still reserved. And I remember in 5th grade, which was the year that she started making dinner once a week, she ran for student council treasurer, or like class officer, I guess it'd be called, not student. Yeah, she like wanted to be the treasurer. And I thought, where did this come from? Wow. But I read the speech that she gave to her class, and she included like, I'm responsible because, I cook dinner for my family and I help watching my little brothers when my parents are working. That was, she wasn't full-time, like a full babysitter, but when I'm here in the office, she'd be in charge of, skinned knees and getting snacks for the little boys. I thought, wow, like these are things that I thought were inside our home, but they're really impacting like her social life and, her school life as well. And then creativity is the 3rd C. And we know that not only are we spending a lot of time here in our little box on our little screens, we're not working with our hands all that often anymore, especially the kids, and we're not being artistic anymore. So there's the two factors of creativity, both the creating, the physical with the hands, and that artistic adult wrote and say, I'm going to switch out this herb, right? Or I'm going to add more of something, or take out the mushrooms because I don't like mushrooms. Like, that's such a sense of agency and creation that again, that it boosts the confidence. It kind of all circulates, but the creativity is really good, especially for our neurodivergent kids, our kids who are maybe a little bit busy in their bodies. Like, let's give them productive things to do with their bodies, right? With their hands, that ends up with dinner instead of, I always say, glitter all over the house if you're just doing crafts.
Yeah, I know we've had some salads that were very interesting, to say the least, but they really, really enjoyed it, and I know you touched on a few things, but the smile that I see on my kids' faces when they make something for us and we all enjoy, it's just such a huge thing that not only are they making food for us, so we are like, yes, this is fantastic, that's taking something off my plate, but that confidence, like you mentioned, when that huge smile, they're like, yeah, I can do it again, I can do it by myself, and it's, yeah, priceless. And even the knife skill, or the knife that you mentioned, yeah, my husband is not super good with his knife skills. And so he gets nervous, I think, more than I do when my kids are using a knife, because I trust that they can use one well, and he's kind of nervous the whole time. But I think I take for granted that my kids know how to use a knife, whereas a lot of kids their age don't. So it's, yeah, it's
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my kid number 3, who is third out of 4, is like the most forgotten kid ever. Like, we've literally forgotten him 3 times this school year at extracurriculars, and he's had to sit, like, literally forgotten. But when he was 7, so he was 4 when we did the whole, like, I'm teaching my kids to cook thing and made the classes. So he had the very, low level helper skills. And once he was 7 in 2nd grade, he came up to me one day and said, Mom, I'm ready. I think I'd like to learn a chef's knife. 7 years old, like, that's really young, but he'd already been using a sharp paring knife for probably 2 years. And I knew he was safe. I knew he was ready. Now, kid number 4 is 8.5 now, and he's still working on his paring knife skills. So kids are very different, but because he was ready, then I was willing to be ready. And so there's definitely an interplay between, like, the child, their personality, their own confidence. But I think it was really neat that he wanted to level up. Yeah. And he's my one too, who often says, like, I love being able to do this because I know most of the kids in my class don't know how to do this. That's a cool feeling.
Yeah. No, my kids are 7 and 9 too. So just in that same age range. So I love that.
Yep.
So speaking from personal experience, I know I have found huge benefits in having kids that can cook. I know I mentioned that they had made food for us, but during the pandemic, it kind of became a necessity that they be able to prepare their own foods while both my husband and I were working from home. There was virtual school. One was in preschool, and preschool let out. And so it was just like free roaming everything, right? And so if we can think back to that, it was just a lifesaver to be able to kind of teach them and then have them do their own thing. And they even were like, I'll make a simple meal once a week. We were like, yes. Right? So yeah. So can you talk about how moms can benefit also? I know I've kind of mentioned some of them already, but it's not just teaching our kids the skills, but we also benefit as parents. Can you talk about that a little bit?
It's so true, especially when, here, one of your goals is to reduce stress for the moms. And I do think that a lot of moms, when they hear, okay, let's teach our kids to cook, they're like, dude, Katie, this is one more thing on my to-do list. Like, you are increasing my stress. Not going to touch it. But like any good investment, there's a huge ROI. And as you mentioned, it's much more than just the kids when they're 18. Kids can manage food for themselves, getting out a snack and feeding themselves. You're able to continue doing what you're doing. Maybe you're working in your office, and we know that every time we get interrupted, that context switching is terrible. Even if it's 5 minutes to grab a kid a snack, you're reducing your productivity probably by 15 minutes because your brain has been pulled away from work. So the kids' ability, absolutely, to serve themselves, to serve their little siblings is such a huge help for the parents. I know in our household, we just went through a really tough season with my mom passed away from ALS and lived in our living room on a hospital bed for 5 months. And that radically changed our family's routines. It added like 3 to 8 hours of caregiving per day on my plate. And so breakfast was me like syringe tube feeding my mom. I was not able to make breakfast for my children. And so the fact that they had already been trained up, right? Like we already had systems and routines in place where I didn't need to make breakfast, but I was still there. We're still kind of connecting as a family, but I did not have to do the hands-on. It was, it would have been untenable without that. And so I kind of say, we buy insurance for all sorts of stuff, right? We put our money in investments for college and for retirement. And I really feel like teaching your kids to cook is the same sort of like preparedness insurance type investment, because if you are pregnant and bedridden, like one of our members talks about all the time that her kids were able to care for the house. She was pregnant and bedridden, and her husband had double knee surgery at the same time. Like there was literally not an adult in the house who could stand up at the counter. And I want to say her boys were like 8 and 11 at the time, but she had already taught them to cook. She'd already taught them how to do basic household chores. And had she not, like the house would have fallen apart completely. So like the time isn't when the crisis happens. The time, even if you feel like your time's really stressed and stretched, to sneak in 5 minutes here and 10 minutes there and get those kids involved. Then when like a true crisis hits, you're ready. And I will say I only make 4 dinners a week because my amazing husband has taken 2, and our 2 older kids have done 1 a week for the last 3 years. And we're just splitting them now where they each have to take 1. So now if you do the math, now I'm down to 3 dinners a week on my plate, which is amazing. If that's not an attractive situation for a mom, I don't know what is.
Oh, that's fantastic. Your story about the mom that was struggling to have 2 adults reminded me of when we got COVID in cereal. And so I had it, I was isolating, and then my husband got it a week later. And then my older one said, well, I guess I'm cooking meals. And I was like, oh my gosh, the fact that he even thought that was a huge win. Yeah.
Awesome.
So some people may be thinking, my kid is too young, or shoot, I started too late, my kid is already old. But I like to think it's never too early or late, right? Do you have any practical tips for parents of various ages to get started?
Oh my gosh, 100%. So what is too young? Like in the womb, I guess. Too young. Like if you have a baby, you want them in your arms or in a carrier, like experiencing the sights, smells, sounds of the kitchen, right? If you have a toddler, then they should be playing with, the plasticware and the pots and pans and the spoons. Like that's sort of it's a classic look, but it teaches kids that the kitchen is a safe and fun place for them. Okay. Because when we say mom's in the kitchen or dad's in the kitchen, like you need to get out, we're training the neural pathways in their brain that the kitchen is not for them. So regardless of how young, we want to keep them in that kitchen with positive experiences. I put tools in my kids' hands at 18 months to 2 years. So we're talking, dull butter knife and a banana. That is all it takes. 2 minutes of training, you're on your way to teaching your kids to cook, right? Taking a little bowl of like salt or sugar and teaching them how to use a butter knife to measure a level teaspoon. So simple. It's again, 5 minutes of training. Kids at that age, like 2, 3, and 4, they love repetition. It's what they do in the sandbox, right? Yeah. So you're literally taking the sandbox, you're putting it in your kitchen, you're teaching them to measure a teaspoon. And then here's where you get to like pull in that brain science of the kitchen is the place for you. The next time you're cooking, you can say, oh, I need a teaspoon of oregano, or I need a teaspoon of ginger, right? Who in here knows how to measure a teaspoon, right? And your preschoolers can be like, and then you give them the ginger in a little spill bowl, and they don't have to take your time, right? Because they can be at the table, they can be out of your elbow room, they can take 5 minutes to measure that perfect teaspoon if you have a little perfectionist kid. And then at dinner you say, oh, this meal tastes so good. Now, it's the seasoning. Who was it who helped get just the right amount of seasoning in here, right? And you're like playing the game, but for the little ones, they're like everyone loves the meal, right? So that's how it is never too young to play that game right there. Do not do that with your 12-year-old. Do not do the same process with the 9-year-old. Okay, totally different motivation. But yes, even if your kid is 17 and they're about to leave the nest next year, yes, now is the time, right? It's always better to do it now. With the teenagers, the motivation factor is going to be a little bit different. Now we might want to start talking about, hey, you don't always love what I make for dinner. Well, guess how you get the most choice possible? You make dinner, but you don't know how. So if you want to choose what's for dinner, let's start with, cutting this carrot, or let's start with cracking this egg, or wherever they are. What's that next skill? And I'm huge on skills over recipes and breaking cooking down into tiny steps, because teach your kids to cook is an impossible to-do list item, right? Yep. Teach your 12-year-old to crack an egg. That's 5 minutes, right? Teach your 15-year-old to hold a small paring knife safely on, again, like cucumbers, zucchinis. They're a lovely kind of medium density, nice long vegetable. So you're not worried about the non-dominant hand fingers, regardless of what age they are. I would start a kid with a paring knife if they're ready for sharp, like even if they're 17, then move up to the chef's knife. But it's one tiny step at a time. So when we talk about like making muffins, that's like 8 different skills. So if you can teach each skill one at a time, eventually your kid can make muffins. And it's not just one recipe, like my son and the magic guac recipe that was the only thing he could make. It's now I have these 8 skills. And now I can go on Pinterest. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, I can make these date bars. Sure, I can make these, energy balls for my sports or whatever. So it's getting those teens interested in that end result and interested in that independence that's going to work for them. But at any age, the tiny steps, the individual skills, really important for our own brains to not get overwhelmed.
I love that you said the recipe is like 8 different things in one, because you're right. It's, I think I just tend to think, yeah, we just do it because we've been doing it for so long. It comes naturally, right? Of, yeah, we just measure, we do the mixing, we do the flipping or whatever it might be. Yeah. But there's a lot. So you alluded to this earlier. I know a lot of parents find it difficult to prioritize cooking healthy, and especially including kids in the process as we're busy and we're already scrambling for time to make meals at home. How can you give your best strategies for when to include them?
Yes, it's not before the meal, when it's new, right? The goal is to get kids who are then helpers before the meal so that they compress your time and speed it up. But when you're teaching something new, that's a super stressful time, right? Because there's that deadline of dinner and everyone's getting hungry and hangry, and it's not going to be the most positive experience for either the kids or you. So I think like step 1 is figuring out what's one thing you can do, that one small step, and then put it at the right time of day. So I love to teach kids cooking when they're fed, right after, an after school snack, or on a weekend after breakfast, after lunch, after snack, so that they're not so hungry that it's kind of putting that pressure on you to get through whatever you're going to get through. And then as soon as they know a skill, then you can say, all right, great. We'd worked on peeling the other day. I have a carrot to peel. Can you practice your skill, over here out of your elbow room? And then you're continuing to make the dinner. So it's that first step away from dinner, looping in some repetition at dinner, and then the kids eventually grow to independence. And now you can really see the time ROI, where it's like the small amount of time you invested is coming back to you like 10 and 100 fold.
And then the big old smile again, right? Or they're like, here's my peeled carrot. Or like you were saying earlier in the dish, like, look at the carrots that so-and-so peeled and cut, or well, peeled in this case. But
right. It might just be that one step. And then the next step might be to learn to cut the carrot into the wheels for the soup or for the stir fry or whatever. But it's so we've got, for most of us, we have plenty of time. We have years to do this. So we don't have to feel like, you need to compress it, especially for families where both parents are working. Like, how do we slide those little bits of time into the edges and into the corners? But it's also, I think, again, especially when both parents are working, you're looking for quality time for your kids, with your kids, right? Like we're looking for like, well, how can I like do something fun with my kids on the weekend? And I just think that this is such productive quality time. So we talk about peeling carrots. I've seen dozens of pictures of families where they're playing with the carrot peels, you know, they put them in their mouths and their tongues. And it just takes a little bit for this to be a fun experience, you know, and maybe it is like, we're going to plan a whole half day on a Saturday morning between breakfast and lunch. And we're going to, you know, put together a bunch of skills that we've already learned and make a whole meal. That's great too. There are those half days sometimes where you're unscheduled. Maybe not. Maybe it's all little bits, but just the quality time is so beautiful, and the kids will remember that. Like whenever I tell people that what I do is teach kids to cook, they either tell me about something their kids have recently made or a memory of cooking with generally their mom or grandma.
Yeah.
Right. From when they were kids. So we are really building, you know, these critical memories with our kids, especially when it's around food, and helping them build that relationship with food while they build the relationship with us. So it's vital, I think, for families. If you have healthy food goals, it's got to be a whole family event.
Yeah. And obviously every kid is different, but when I started this younger, now you get this, oh, I want to help. And it's so amazing. I'm like, oh, okay, someone can peel for me, you know? So I love that you emphasize starting young, and it's not too young. And I want to go back to the teaspoon because you have a lot of fun terms like baby, baby mommy, baby kid, mommy daddy. You know, there's just like fun ways in which you can talk about it without having exact terminology yet of like 1 teaspoon or whatnot. So I appreciated that as well, to start really, really young.
Yeah, we use a lot of kid-friendly language. You know, when it comes to the knives, we say up and over soldier and keep your hand hey out of the way. So there's like 3 ways to hold the food, 4 ways to move the knife. And when the parents and the kids build that common vocabulary, that also, you know, and like what you found, we call the spoons dad, mom, kid, baby, which is not the family structure for everyone, but like they get it from the storybooks and everything. What that does, and what like our terminology for cutting and moving the knife and holding the food, what all of that does is it allows you to verbally direct your child without interrupting your task, right? So when I'm cooking dinner, I don't have 5 minutes to walk over to the table mid dinner prep and help the child get this right. So that's why we teach it away from the dinner, the meal, the hard part of the day. The skills already taught. We have this common vocabulary. Now I can look over, right? I've got this 8-year-old who's working on his paring knife skills. I can say, oh, Gabe, remember, hey out of the way with your hand, right? Or you need a saw blade motion, or you need a tug of war pull motion. And because he knows what that is, I don't have to walk over and like move his hand. I can just direct him. And so that's one of the beauties too of our fun phrases and our common vocabulary that we teach parents and kids. It just again allows like a more calmer, less stressed way to get those kids involved.
Yeah, no, I love that vocabulary instead of, you know, hey, watch out for your hands, or, you know, like all the things that we can be as moms that, might alarm them. So I love that. So what are some other healthy habits that you've seen make a big difference for families?
I'm a huge advocate, Amy, for a family dinner.
Me
and
too.
whether for your family, that might be family breakfast, right? That might be family brunch on a weekend. It's the act of sitting down together and eating that meal. We know from, you know, statistically research-based with picky eaters, our kids mimic what we do. And so they can't learn to eat if they're not watching adults they love eat. And that happens organically, authentically, when we sit down together and break bread, right? Whether that's bread or pita or naan or lettuce because you're grain free, you know what I mean? Like it's metaphorical, right?
Yeah.
But we need our kids to have that positive sense of community, of culture around food. We need them to have a good relationship with food, which means we've got to sit down with them and eat together and have some family traditions. You know, a lot of people will say, try really hard not to talk about the stressful events of the day, especially as an adult, right? Because that kind of like rains down on them. We want to have dinner conversation. We used to do, it's been a crazy year this year. So all of our routines are out the window. But in the the old definition of family dinner, we would talk about either our rose and our thorn, right? The best part of your day and the hardest part of your day.
We
Or
call
we
it
would
our
do
high-low buffalo.
oh, is buffalo a third thing or is that
It's
just
a
a rhyme?
surprise. I don't know why. I think it's just because it rhymes, but a high of the
Cute.
day, a low of the day, and a surprise of the day.
Yep. Yeah, that one's really good. We have the 3 L's is another one. If you've done rose thorn or high low and you're getting tired of it, the 3 L's are: when did you laugh? What's something you learned today? And how did you love someone else today?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And the laugh one's great because hopefully people share funny things and then you're laughing as a family, right? And now your fight or flight is turned off. You're in rest and digest. It's so much better, for the eating and the digesting and the being healthy. So I would say, I mean, I know that can be hard. Research says 2 family dinners is where the benefits begin. Benefits include less drug and alcohol use, less tendency toward depression and suicide as teens, higher academic success. In fact, family dinners have a bigger impact on grades than homework and time in school. Like it's a really big deal. So all those benefits start at just 2. So this is not a huge goal. This is out of the 21 meals in the week. Can you find 2 where at least one adult, at least one, is sitting down with the kids?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I stress that at home because I don't want to be in front of screens and eating
Right.
and not talking to each other. And it's just a time to come together, right? Because breakfast for us, everybody does their own thing. I'm like in and out 30 minutes after I wake up, we're leaving for school. I know it's summer now, but um, so it's just an important time for us to come back together. So I love that you shared that family dinner or family meal, if you want to call it family meal, is a huge part.
Yeah.
It just creates that connection, like you said too, where we're having those conversations together. It's not like everybody's going to their rooms and devices and just separate, because I know that can happen, especially as they get older. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Make a line in the sand on that one. That is worth the battle of no, our children do not go to their rooms. Our teenagers do not go to their rooms with their meal. It's super common, and like no judgment from Amy and I, no guilt, no shame. We've all slid into bad habits. So like if that's one that you have, oh my gosh, Katie, we're totally watching TV during dinner. We don't sit down at the table. We're all in our separate rooms on our separate screens. There's nothing that's undoable. Like you can always start a new habit, and you just tell the kids like, you know what, mom is still learning, or I'm still learning so many new things. And I'm just understanding that this is a habit that I don't want to have anymore. And here's our new habit. And you'll get pushback for a couple of days, and then it'll be the family norm.
And I love that you emphasize no judgment, because that's absolutely right. And we do it sometimes. Like the NBA finals were a big deal in our house, or like the NBA, playoffs. And so sometimes we made a thing to go sit on the couch and eat together. But we're trying to not make that the norm, right? And change things. So
and same here. Like we definitely watch TV sometimes, but it's special.
Yeah.
Right. Which actually makes the TV watching like a family thing too. If it is maybe once a week or less and you have these regular family dinners, it's fun to have like family movie dinner night, or family we're watching Lego Masters or Ninja Warriors. Like that's the kind of stuff that we watch as a family. It's nice because you can kind of stop it anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. Like everybody's done eating, let's pause it and we'll pick it up next week or whatever.
Yeah.
But I do think if it's not the norm, it makes the TV time more special, and it makes your family dinners more special.
Yeah. Love that. Perfect. So we like to end by giving our moms a quick challenge or action to do today, so that they can start taking that action and feel like it's a win. Can you share your challenge for our moms?
Yeah. It's just teach kids to cook on your to-do list. That's all you need to do.
No problem. Get it done today.
Just kidding. No, we're going to take action on exactly what we've been talking about already. Is no matter how many kids you have, choose one of them and look at that child and think, what's the next one small skill that they could do in the kitchen, right? So maybe it's cracking an egg. Maybe it's using the stove, like to boil water, right? Keep it super simple. Maybe they're a bigger kid and they're strong enough and it's putting something into the oven. Again, not making the muffins, just putting them into the oven. It's whatever the next step is. Maybe it's that teaspoon or the butter knife and the banana if you have little ones. So choose the kid, choose the skill, and then put it in your real calendar as if it's an extracurricular. Choose the time. P.S. Remember, not before dinner, right? So when are you going to do that? If it gets missed because life is as life is, then move it, kick it forward. move it to another time. But that's your step to get it in the calendar. And it's just the snowball effect will happen when you start to see the smiles like Amy saw for her kids.
And when you do it, if you have questions or you want to tell us how it went, please be sure to come back and tell us. And do you have anything else? Oh, you have a fantastic freebie for our mamas. Can you share what that is and how people can connect with you further?
Yeah, let's get knives in the hands of all the kids. Our knife skills class is always our member favorite. So this is a 10-minute video teaching the same skills, butter knives to chef's knives, of those 3 ways to hold the food and 4 ways to move the knife. So you'll learn some fun phrases at kidscookrealfood.com/whole wellness. And that's totally a free gift.
It's a fantastic freebie. So go check it out, everyone. Anything else you want to share with our mamas before we wrap up?
Just the encouragement that you can do this, You've got lots of time to teach your kids to cook, to get them involved. And it's so very worth it. So find those small little steps and incorporate them into your regular life.
Thank you, Katie, for sharing such valuable information to set ourselves up for success and especially our kids up for success. Everyone, like I said, go grab that freebie, go try it out, go do the challenge, and be sure to come back for more amazing summit speakers.